I have found myself accidentally in the middle of a children's book illustration project. I don't know how we got here. I was just doodling a little mouse one night while I was watching the Great British Bake Off, and I loved him so much. In last week's video we drew his backstory together, where he was sitting with his granddad and he was discovering what it means to have a garden for the first time. And I kind of thought that that would be it, that would be enough. I would get him out my head and I could close the book on this project. Silly me, because absolutely not. I am still all consumed by this little mouse, so I feel like I just need to run with it and do a fully fleshed out project. So today the goal is to take a few steps back, do some character design sketches of the other animals that would be in the garden with them. Obviously you can't just pop to B&Q or the shops and buy a plant pot or some seeds. You need some friends to help him out. I'm going to use Procreate as kind of like a digital sketchbook because I think it's a little bit more flexible and it lets you play around a little bit more. And the goal is literally just to draw as many animals as I physically can, and hopefully by the end of it have some fully fleshed out characters that I think would sit really well in the story. This isn't kind of the sketches that I would usually show online. I'm hoping by showing some of my process it might be helpful for you if you're a little bit confused by looking online and just seeing people's finished illustrations and not really being sure how they get there from like an initial sketch. So yeah, I hope this is helpful. I hope you enjoy it. I'm so excited. The plan is to hopefully draw a mole, a worm and some kind of bird. My canvas is set up to 25 by 25 centimeters, 300 dpi and an RGB colour space. I don't have any plans to print these or even post them online, but just in case in the future. I'm using a dry ink brush with the stabilisation and streamline turned completely off, so it just draws like a normal pencil on a sketchbook. Thank God I created a Pinterest board of references before I started, because apparently I have absolutely no idea what a mole looks like. Animal Crossing really set me up for failure because I thought these things would be quite large and angry, but they're actually teeny tiny. They're so cute, they're so fluffy. I was about to say I fell down a rabbit hole when I was looking at pictures, but I really fell down a mole hole. I must have spent at least an hour just looking at pictures of these little animals online. The idea for this character is that the little mouse needs a plant pot, and I was having a little think about which animal would be most suited for pottery, and I think a mole is perfect. Obviously he'll know his stuff when it comes to soil and clay, but because they're almost completely blind, they're really skilled with their hands. So I didn't want to give him any glasses. I wanted his hands to be a strong point. When I searched pottery aesthetic on Pinterest, it was lots of dungarees and hair bandanas, so that obviously had to be part of his character. And I found it so funny how the more I was drawing, the more I was realising, like here, this guy looks a little bit like an elephant until you take off his chin, and then suddenly he looks like a really skinny, like almost like a turtle. And it was so silly how just like rounding things off or straightening a few edges can really change the entire look of a character. I like this little guy. I feel like he looks a little bit like, I don't know, maybe like a man in his 40s would if he was a mole. And then I decided to try a few more with like kind of skinny, elongated faces. I was kind of figuring out that the longer and skinnier the face, the older the mole would look, compared to when it's more like short and chubby. I'm trying to keep all of these sketches onto one layer just so I don't get too precious about what anything looks like, and I'm really trying to keep these sketches down to like 1 or 2 minutes at most, so I'm using the selection tool a lot just to resize everything. I really like this little guy. He reminds me of my dog so much. If you have a Chihuahua, you might know what I mean, or it might just be my dog, but he gives me that smile all the time. I've put little stars next to some of my favourite moles, and I'm trying to take characteristics from both of those into the sketches that I'm doing coming up. I haven't done any kind of full body ones yet, so I'm trying to add a little bit more detail into this one, just so I can play around with how I want his height to be, what I want his legs to look like, and what kind of feet he should have. Although as soon as I added that smile, he did look a little bit more sinister. I really like this final mole that I'm drawing. I think he's so cute, so I decided to copy and paste him onto his own layer and spend a few more minutes just focusing purely on this one, adding as many details as I can and really trying to use everything I had figured out from all the other moles before to see how his character could look. I really did think he looked really cute, but he was also looking a little bit too much like a little lad than I really wanted from the character. I tried changing his arm shape and then changing his trousers to more wide-leg ones and giving him a little bit of a different stance, but he was still looking a little bit laddie, so I duplicated the sketch and then flipped it on its sides, because sometimes if you're looking at something for too long, just flipping the canvas can really help give you a different perspective. As soon as I changed the hair bandana, I knew I'd made the right choice because it was starting to look a little bit more like I wanted. I just turned the opacity down on that layer and then added another one on top so I could really refine the sketch. I widened the legs even more, and then the back was looking a little bit too curved, so I just straightened that out. And then as soon as I flipped that canvas again, I could immediately tell what was wrong with the face. So I gave him kind of a larger snout. And it wasn't until right now, right in the last 10 seconds, that I really felt like she was coming together and I could really see the character that really fit with the story and didn't just look like a normal mole. She really looked like what I needed it to look like. And I was so happy because it really took me ages to draw all of those moles. I'm giving her some paintbrushes and some splatters because obviously she's into pottery, so we need to give her some indications of that for when she's doing the glazes. And then I was so happy. The relief after drawing for so long. It's always at the last few seconds that it all seems to come together. Next up is the worm, and I was a little bit flummoxed because unlike a mole, which has a little bit more of a complex shape, a worm is a worm. I didn't know how many different ways I could really tackle the character, so I just started playing around with some shapes. This one was a little bit more chubby than the other one, and I thought that was so cute. And then this one, I wanted to look a little bit more kind of shocked and anxious. It ended up reminding me a lot of that really creepy character in Nightmare Before Christmas. I decided to give this one a little hat because worms only really come out when it rains, so a rain hat feels like the perfect accessory for a worm. And then as soon as I added the nose, I knew this was the one for me. It felt so nice for this to be such a simple process compared to how long the mole took me. I added it onto the same layer as the mole, making sure it was looking cohesive. I added some stars onto her skin because obviously she doesn't have as many clothes as the mole does. And then it was time to move on to the bird. So basically the idea for the story is that the little mouse goes to the mole in order to get a plant pot for his garden, and then the next thing he needs is soil, which is where the worm comes in, and then the last thing he needs for his plant is a seed, and who better to source a seed from than a bird? For references for the bird, I was looking up magpies because I think they are so funny. They have so much character, they're so silly, and I also wanted it to be a bird that children would easily recognise whether they live in the city or a countryside. I was trying to keep my sketches as loose as possible and to just really play around with like the different shapes. I was trying to think of what accessory or clothes the bird could wear, and I don't know if I've just been watching too much Great British Bake Off, but as soon as I added little boots, bird reminded me so much of Noel Fielding, so I gave him a nice jumper as well. And then I was building on that character for this bird. I gave him a little acorn hat because I thought that would just be the perfect accessory for someone who considers themselves a seed connoisseur, and then a little backpack obviously for his collection of his favourite seeds. I added this bird to the other two illustrations and it just did not feel right. Something felt off. So I took a break and I was watching the pigeons in my garden, and it's one of my favourite things to do. I do it every single morning, and I thought, why am I being so silly drawing a magpie when I should just be drawing a pigeon? I think sometimes when you're in the middle of an illustration and it's quite difficult, it's not coming very easy, it's hard to know whether that's something you need to push through and keep working on, or whether it's time to change direction. I think this was an instance in when a change of direction was definitely the right call. Compared to earlier with the magpies, these pigeons were just so much easier to draw and they were so much fun. The magpies were quite stiff and quite boring really when I looked at them, whereas the pigeons have so much more character, and I'm not sure if it's just because I'm more familiar with them. I think when you draw things from your everyday life, it shows compared to when you're just using like a reference picture, because you can really get the essence of what you're trying to draw. Activities like this are really helpful because when you draw the same animal over and over and over again, you really get to know which characteristics need to be there so that the animal is easily identifiable, and which things you can really play around with and take creative liberty. I think, for example, with the pigeon, it needs to have a really like full and chubby body but a nice long neck, and when you look at it straight on, its beak should be quite a cute little heart shape. I think this little guy is my favourite pigeon. Pigeons aren't like robins where they give a good sing-song, they're not that kind of bird, but they are a very playful bird, and you definitely see them throwing seeds up in the air and just playing around. When I got to the final little bird, I realised I really needed to get a move on and add some clothes or accessories. Because pigeons have got really like colourful and vibrant feathers, adding a jumper really didn't seem like the right decision. So I tried the scarf first and that really didn't suit either, so I just went with the little acorn hat and the backpack, and I think that looks really nice. I think it's a really sweet little character. And when I added it in with the other three, it really complemented the little group. And now the final bit of the process is to have a little bit of a play around with some colours. I'm starting with the mole first and just blocking in where his skin will be, adding his little hands and his little feet. I don't know why I'm using grey. I think I just wanted to try an alternative colour and see how it would work. I don't really think it does work, but sometimes you don't know that until you try. I'm using the illustration we did last week as a reference picture to pull some colours from so that it all works cohesively. I used the colour of the fireplace to make the moles fair, and I think that works so much better. Adding his little tail, because I forgot that earlier, and then just neating it up where it meets his overalls. I tried a few different colours for the overalls, but I think the orange works the best. And then I'm just going in with the multiplier layer on a clip and mask and adding some shadows. And then adding the little details for his face and his rosy cheeks. I'm using the multiplier layer again to add some shadows to his hands and his skin, or his fur. And then I decided to make his shocked face into a little happy smile. I think that looks so lovely. I'm adding some sewing detail to his overalls and a little pocket. And then finally some texture on top, which I think really makes all the difference. I'm just neatening up where his little hand will meet his jumper, and then adding some details to his little scarf as well. And finally adding the little stars on top. And then his paintbrushes for the glazes of his pottery. I decided to try doing green and red first, and I added little splotches from where he's been using glazes. But then when I added the green splotches, I'm not really sure it works. I think it looks a bit too much like camouflage, so I got rid of them and I changed the green paint to red paint. Next was the worm, and I'm doing the exact same process. I tried to neaten up his hat a little bit first, foreshadowing for the absolute pain this hat is about to give me. I think I spent at least 40 minutes making very small tweaks to the hat over and over and over again, and I can't even show you because they were so small, and a lot of it was just me staring into place trying to figure it out. I think what's throwing me off most is the fact that this is against a cream background, and the worm is going to appear against mostly brown because he's going to be in the soil, so it was kind of hard to get a good idea of what colours I should use at all. I'm just adding some little shadows here, and looking back, I do think the yellow works really well. I added some brown to the bottom of the screen just to try give me a better overall view, and then I changed the hat shape for probably the 90th time, and he was done. I'm probably going to make a lot more tweaks going forward with him, but for now I think he works really well. The pigeon was the one I was most nervous for because I wasn't really sure how to do his feathers, but I thought I'll just start with the things I know first and then add the rest in as I go along. It's a really good approach to take when you are a bit out of your comfort zone with an illustration. Just start with what you know, and then it's much easier to slot in the little bits that you don't. I used a lot of texture for his feathers, and then for the pink and the green I used a motion blur layer, and I think that looks really nice. It just peeks through underneath all of the texture. I'm adding the same texture details that I did for the previous two animals just so that they all come together and look quite cohesive, and then I'm adding the details to his backpack so it looks like a little leaf. I think I'll probably, with all three of them, go back and make changes, but that's the process of illustration. It is a very iterative process, and it's okay to try something and then decide you don't like it and change it later on. Nothing has to be set in stone. I think you just have to have fun with it and just enjoy the whole process. We did it! Thank you so much for coming along with me for the entirety of this video. I hope it wasn't too frustrating watching all of my trial and error, and I hope you found something helpful in seeing the whole process. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. I post a new video every week where I draw something new. Thank you so much for doing this with me. I know it's such a silly project, but I'm having so much fun. I'll see you next time. Bye!